Have you ever been haunted by that quiet ache, the sense that you're merely going through the motions, busy with deadlines, social obligations, and endless to-dos, yet feeling utterly hollow inside? Maybe you chalk it up to anxiety. Perhaps a doctor labeled it depression, handed you medications to mute the discomfort, and you dutifully swallowed those pills morning and night, numbing precisely the signal you most need to heed. But what if this suffering isn't an error to be erased, but a beacon calling you back to your true self? Carl Jung, one of the founders of depth psychology, argued that what we label mental illness is often not pathology, but the psyche's own attempt at healing. It's a red flag signaling that your current life, your 9-to-5 grind, those draining relationships, goals that feel hollow, no longer serves your soul. You may be living someone else's script, chasing dreams that aren't even yours, while the real you is screaming to break free. Yet our culture teaches us to silence that inner cry, to conform, to perform, to fit in at all costs. And so we fall ill in silence. All the while, the world applauds our efficiency. Jung insisted that genuine healing doesn't come from denial or symptom coverage, but from diving in, from paying close attention to what our suffering is trying to tell us. In his words, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. In the next segment, we'll learn how to listen to that inner cry, how to translate your discomfort into a roadmap for transformation rather than a problem to be medicated away. Freeing your soul starts when you stop numbing its alarm bells and begin honoring their message. Put simply, you're unwell because you're fleeing the very hurt you need to face to transform your life. As long as you keep running, your suffering only deepens. This video isn't for those seeking another distraction. It's for anyone exhausted by the masquerade, anyone who feels themselves slipping under yet clings to the tiniest spark of hope that change is possible. And it is. Starting with one hard choice: stop running and start listening. Listen to your own voice. Listen to the whisper of your unconscious. Listen to that ache you've tried to drown with pills, with junk food, with endless busyness. If you've made it here, you've probably sensed that this emptiness isn't a failing. It's proof that you've abandoned yourself in your own life. Now it's time to reclaim your presence. Think back to your last medical visit. You poured out your sleepless nights, your racing thoughts, that sudden knot in your chest that came without warning, the hollow sense of being a stranger in your own days. After barely 15 minutes, you left with a diagnosis, anxiety, and a prescription. Just like that, your existential plea was reduced to a chemical imbalance, your deepest cry distilled into a pill label. But there's another way. In the next section, we'll explore how to honor the message behind your pain, how to turn that discomfort into the first step of real, soulful healing, so that your anguish doesn't remain a footnote in a prescription pad, but becomes the catalyst for your true awakening. What nobody tells you is that this treatment isn't aimed at your soul, it's aimed at your productivity. The goal is to keep you working, consuming, and churning through tasks so the system keeps humming. Medication simply numbs the edge, letting you endure the unbearable and carry on as if nothing's wrong. But this solution, as Jung warned, is the real trap. He argued that most modern neuroses don't stem from a biological glitch in your brain, but from a profound split between the life you're living and the life your soul is urging you toward. When you suppress your true calling, your deepest yearnings, your own inner truths, your soul can no longer speak in words, so it cries out through your body and mind. Anxiety, panic attacks, that hollow despair. Yet our reflex isn't to listen. It's to silence every twinge of discomfort with another dose, to patch things up chemically so we can return to normal as fast as possible. But ask yourself, what exactly is normal? Is it a job that drains you but you can't abandon? Superficial connections kept alive only for appearances? Empty targets met out of obligation? Mechanical routines that leave you feeling you're merely surviving rather than living? If this is normal, then perhaps your psyche's revolt is the clearest sign that you're overdue for a radical course correction. Your anxiety isn't a defect in your wiring, it's your soul's protest. This life isn't mine, I'm betraying you. When you tune it out too long, your body raises the volume with panic attacks or crippling fatigue, yet the system offers another pill, another label, another layer of sedation. Each dose deepens the dissociation until you feel nothing, no joy, no pain, just that dull ache of chronic numbness we accept as adult life. Jung cautioned that blotting out a symptom without excavating its source is a mirage of healing. You may look stable on the surface, but inside you drift further from yourself, and eventually the soul insists on payment. It shows up as total burnout, emotional breakdowns, or a hollowness no distraction can cure. Our widespread reliance on quick fixes reflects a cultural terror of true suffering, a refusal to see pain as the threshold of transformation. For Jung, genuine growth begins where discomfort starts. Yet today, any hint of unease is pathologized and silenced, robbing countless people of their call to individuation. How many lives are being ghosted by medications that merely camouflage the wound? How many personal odysseys have been cut short before they could even take flight? To answer that, we must face what really underlies our emotional collapse, and that is exactly what we'll explore next. Another vital truth you must face. It may not be you who's broken, but the world that taught you to distrust yourself. Pause and ask, why, in an age of unprecedented comfort, connectivity, and choice, are so many of us still emotionally desolate? We've never had more information, more entertainment, more freedom, and never been so alienated from our own hearts. The fault line of modern distress isn't buried solely in individual brains. It's carved into the structures and stories that shape us from the cradle. Jung saw this with unflinching honesty. Our crisis is as cultural as it is personal. We inhabit a society that worships surface, the glossy images, the curated personas, while starving the soul. From grade school onward, we're drilled to ace tests, pick safe career paths, chase performance metrics, and plaster on a smile for every selfie. We excel at doing, but we're never shown how to be, how to hear our inner voice or recognize what truly makes life meaningful. This isn't accidental, it's engineered. We've been conditioned to think our worth derives from external markers, our titles, our paychecks, our follower counts. But as Jung warned, that's a deadly trap. When your value hinges on shifting standards, you're forever vulnerable to the next setback. Worse still, you lose touch with your deeper nature, your unconscious yearnings, your authentic self, and that's where the slow creeping emptiness takes root. In the next section, we'll examine how these cultural forces manufacture suffering, and crucially, how you can begin reclaiming your own sense of meaning from the inside out. You can tick every box, the career milestones, the social commitments, the right lifestyle, and still feel utterly off-kilter, as though you're inhabiting someone else's script. That isn't weakness, it's disconnection, a drift away from your spontaneous, instinctive core. Jung warned that this very alienation fuels our deepest psychological wounds, yet our culture keeps us blind to it. Disconnected people are far easier to manage. They consume more, question less, obey unquestioningly. They're useful, docile, predictable. And when they finally crack under the weight of anxiety, depression, or burnout, the system rushes in with quick fixes, never with the real answer. Jung insisted that healing demands a stark confrontation, not just of our symptoms, but of the cultural conditioning that silenced our true selves. You must trace the roots of your emptiness back to its origin. The compromises you made for acceptance, the facets of your nature you buried to fit a mold. It's a painful reckoning, admitting you've been domesticated by a world that fears the depth of human spirit. Yet this honesty is your only way out. Only by unearthing the source of your disconnection can you begin to fill that void with authentic truth. This process has a name: individuation, Jung's roadmap to genuine healing and self-realization. Soon, we'll delve into what it really means to individuate, how you reintegrate those forgotten parts of yourself, reclaim your wholeness, and forge a life rich with meaning. It's a path that demands both courage and surrender, but it's the most vital journey you'll ever undertake. Stay with me, and let's take that next step together. Jung wasn't pitching quick-fix self-help or tweaking your morning routine. He was pointing to a profound, almost mythic transformation. Individuation is when you stop mirroring external demands, family rules, cultural scripts, others' expectations, and begin embodying your true essence. It's the journey to psychic wholeness, where you shift from "who do they want me to be" to "who am I really?" This path is neither tidy nor painless. It demands you face the contents of your personal unconscious, the old wounds you sidestepped, the long-suppressed longings, the inherited beliefs you never dared question. Individuation starts the moment you resolve to stop running from these buried parts and begin reintegrating them. But that's only step one. The real crucible is the encounter with your shadow, that raw, instinctive, chaotic undercurrent you've masked away. The unexpressed rage, the envy you deny, the impulses that shame you. As Jung declared, those who look outside dream, those who look inside awaken. To look inside is to meet your shadow without pretense, without excuses, without moralizing. If ignored, the shadow puppeteers your choices from the dark. If embraced, it gifts you boundless authenticity, vitality, and inner power. True healing doesn't lie in polishing your persona to fit in, but in forging an inner unity, a self-alignment where you are no longer broken parts, but a living totality. It's ironic. While the world urges you to improve, Jung insisted you must first become whole, not perfect, but genuine, not conforming, but free. Yes, the road of individuation can be lonely and grueling, yet it alone imbues life with real meaning. Once you root your actions in your core, everything shifts: your decisions, your relationships, the very way you experience each moment. That is the promise of the journey inward. Your relationship to suffering transforms. It stops feeling like a punishment and becomes the raw material of your evolution. But here's the inevitable question. Why do so many people remain cut off from this inner journey, numbed and trapped in repetitive loops, afraid to face their own soul? The answer lies in modernity's deepest wound, a crushing absence of meaning. A quiet epidemic that eats away from the inside, even in those whose lives look normal. Think about those around you. How many simply mark time, ticking through hollow routines, dialing in at work, scrolling their evenings away, and still waking exhausted no matter how much they sleep? Jung saw this erosion as structural, not accidental. He traced the root of our widespread distress to a single, ruthless truth. Life stripped of personal purpose loses its grip on us. And he wasn't referring to some cosmic destiny or utopian ideal. He meant the small but pivotal alignment between who you are and what you do. When your daily actions spring from your inner truth instead of society's mandates, when you live by your own why, something profound shifts. In Jung's practice, he watched his patients' darkest symptoms, Anxiety, depression, apathy, despair begin to ease not when pills were piled on, nor when bank balances swelled, but when they discovered a why worth living for. Because deep down, you can bear almost any hardship if you know what it's for. But robbed of meaning, even the brightest joys feel empty, and every ambition rings hollow. And that, Jung would say, is the plague of our age. In the next section, we'll explore how reclaiming and creating your sense of purpose can lift the fog of existential pain, guiding you back to a life that's not just endured, but alive. We're facing nothing less than an epidemic of emptiness, not just mental overload, but a void of purpose. Our days bristle with obligations, yet lack true direction. Jung recognized that we're wired to feel part of something larger than ourselves, to sense that our lives carry real weight and consequence. Strip that away, and we fragment. The soul groans for a path, while the world doles out distractions, social media likes, binge watches, self-help mantras, productivity hacks, each a band-aid over a wound that only truth can mend. Too many of us are living scripts we never wrote. We've slid into careers misaligned with our values, into relationships that drain rather than nourish, into cities that stifle instead of inspire. We march through routines that erase our spark, day after lifeless day. Our bodies register the strain, our minds snap under the weight, our spirits recoil. No amount of serotonin can fill a life devoid of direction. No dopamine hit can replace a lost identity. This is where Jung's depth psychology becomes more than an academic curiosity. It becomes a lifeline. He didn't aim merely to patch people up so they could function. He urged them to live authentically, to find the courage to declare, "This life is not mine. I refuse to continue this way." But how? How do you rebuild meaning when every force around you screams, "Stay distracted"? Jung's answer: reconnect with your unconscious. Within those shadowed, repressed corners of your psyche lies the blueprint for your unique purpose. The very parts you fear confronting hold the seeds of your most authentic calling. In the next section, we'll explore exactly how to forge that reconnection, how the unconscious, far from being a graveyard of old traumas, can become your greatest ally in rediscovering who you are and why you're here. Because what you most avoid facing might just be the key to finally living a life brimming with meaning. Most people crave healing, yet few will pay its true cost. Real transformation doesn't start with Instagram mantras or a fresh morning routine. It begins with a descent into the hidden chambers of your own soul. That's the wisdom Jung left us. No genuine healing without facing the unconscious. But Jung's unconscious isn't just a dusty archive of old wounds and repressed memories. It's a vivid cosmos, teeming with every impulse you shunned, every fear you buried, every authentic spark you abandoned. Why does this matter? Because the parts of you left in shadow don't stay buried. They run the show from behind the scenes. As Jung put it, what you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate. You may blame bad luck for your romantic misfires, yet you keep reenacting the same heartbreak loops. You may feel sabotaged at work, yet you unconsciously resist true success. You may rail against life's injustices, not realizing you're still chained to past traumas you never faced. The unconscious is like a dark mirror reflecting the raw truth of who you are, not the polished version you wish to be. It's terrifying because it unveils your survival masks, your desperate clutches at control, your unspoken inner chaos. And yet, herein lies the paradox. Only by embracing these hidden parts do you reclaim your wholeness. The more you deny your unconscious, the more fragmented, reactive, and exhausted you become. But the moment you integrate it, you expand your consciousness and step into genuine freedom. How? By learning its language, dreams, symbols, art, silence, meditation, or deep analysis. The unconscious speaks not in logic, but in images, emotions, and sensations that seem to arise from nowhere, but are, in truth, you. When you finally listen, a radical shift occurs. You begin to see yourself with clarity, to understand your choices, and to embrace your wounds. Above all, you reclaim your power. No longer are you a captive to others' expectations, to your past, to cultural scripts. By diving into your unconscious, you discover that your anxiety isn't an enemy. It's a message pointing the way. Your sadness isn't a flaw. It's a signal that part of you must release for something new to come alive. That is the alchemy of true healing, the soul's own blueprint for rebirth. Healing isn't a weekend project or a checklist. It's a pilgrimage into the hidden realms of your own soul. It demands time, curiosity, courage, and a willingness to forsake the safety of the surface. Yet it's the only route to genuine authenticity, where you cease being a puppet of unconscious drives and become the author of your destiny. Now that you see how the unconscious shapes both your suffering and your potential, ask yourself, what's stopping you from taking that first step? Why do so many, even armed with this knowledge, remain stuck, zombie-like, on autopilot? The answer is fear. Fear of change, fear of loss, fear of letting go of the familiar, even when it's toxic. In our final segment, we'll confront that very fear and the hardest choice of all, to remain numbed or to truly awaken. There's no safe middle ground. There comes a crossroads when you must choose between the life you've been conditioned to live, one of mechanical routines and hollow distractions, and the sacred promise you make to your own soul. If you've stayed with me this far, it's not by accident. Something inside you is stirring. It might still be a faint whisper, or it may already be an urgent cry. Either way, it won't be silenced, because it springs from your most vital, alive essence, the part that refuses to accept that life is just work, sleep, repeat. Jung called the greatest privilege of existence to become who you truly are. And he knew why it's so widely avoided. It demands you sacrifice comfort, confront your deepest shadows, and question every truth you once believed. But this is what makes it sacred. It transforms, it heals, it awakens. Most will opt for numbness, stocking up on distractions while their souls quietly wither. You don't have to be one of them. You can choose to wake up, to stop anesthetizing yourself, to build a life that matters, a life that is you. It won't be easy. You'll face pain, confusion, even loss. But on the other side lies freedom. An unshakable soul doesn't wait for permission. It simply is. So tell me, what lie are you still telling yourself? Drop it in the comments. A single sentence, a confession, a question. Writing it down is your first act of presence, choice, and awakening. And if this struck a chord, don't stop here. The next video awaits, ready to guide you even deeper. The time to continue is now.